Discover the secrets to meaningful communication, practical skills for connecting with others. The art of communication is the language of leadership. James Humes. Have you ever felt that your words just aren't hitting the mark? Like you're speaking, but no one is truly hearing you? You're not alone. Words possess incredible power. They can be the difference between hope and despair, or the element that strengthens or weakens a relationship. However, while dialogue is a universal experience, mastering the art of meaningful communication remains elusive for many. In this blank, we explore practical skills to elevate your communication, making every conversation more impactful and authentic. Firstly, it's essential to recognize that words shape our connections. The way we communicate profoundly influences our relationships, both personal and professional. Miscommunication can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and a sense of isolation. On the flip side, clear and thoughtful communication fosters understanding, trust, and intimacy. As Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." By refining our communication skills, we can create lasting positive impressions and stronger bonds. Effective communication starts with authenticity. Expressing yourself genuinely can be challenging, especially when emotions run high or the stakes are significant. Many of us struggle to find the right words, often fearing judgment or rejection. However, embracing vulnerability and honesty in our dialogue opens the door to more meaningful interactions. When we speak from the heart, we invite others to do the same, paving the way for deeper connections. Listening is as crucial as speaking. True communication is a two-way street where listening plays a pivotal role. Active listening involves not just hearing the words but understanding the emotions and intentions behind them. This empathetic approach can transform conversations, allowing you to address underlying concerns and build rapport. By honing your listening skills, you can better support others and foster a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Addressing difficult issues is another area where many falter. Confrontation is often uncomfortable, yet avoiding it can lead to unresolved conflicts and lingering resentment. Learning to navigate these conversations with tact and sensitivity is vital. Using techniques like I statements, staying calm, and focusing on solutions rather than blame can help you tackle tough topics effectively, leading to healthier and more open relationships. Finally, it's important to understand the psychological underpinnings of communication. Our emotions, much like a smoke alarm, signal when something needs our attention. By recognizing and articulating our feelings, we can manage them better and communicate more clearly. Additionally, understanding the motivations behind others' words, whether they're seeking pleasure or avoiding pain, can provide valuable insights into their behavior, enabling more compassionate and constructive interactions. In conclusion, mastering communication is a journey that requires continuous learning and practice. By embracing authenticity, honing listening skills, and addressing issues directly, you can transform your interactions and build stronger, more meaningful connections. Communication works for those who work at it. John Powell. About the author. Oren J. Sofer is a distinguished somatic experiencing practitioner and a certified trainer of nonviolent communication. Renowned for his expertise, he leads meditation and communication retreats and workshops across the globe. As the founder of Next Step Dharma, a pioneering meditation course platform, and co-founder of Mindful Healthcare, Oren brings mindfulness and effective communication training to healthcare professionals, enhancing their ability to provide compassionate care. His work empowers individuals to transform their lives through mindful and meaningful interactions. In the bustling city of San Francisco, Emma, a dedicated nurse, was known for her compassionate care. Yet, despite her best efforts, she often found herself at odds with her colleagues. The fast-paced environment of the hospital left little room for understanding and patience. Misunderstandings and conflicts were frequent, and Emma felt increasingly stressed and isolated. One particularly challenging day, after a heated argument with a fellow nurse, Emma decided something needed to change. Her friend Laura, noticing her distress, suggested she attend a workshop on nonviolent communication, NVC, led by Oren J. Sofer. Skeptical but desperate for a solution, Emma agreed. The workshop was a revelation. Oren's calm presence and insightful teachings on mindfulness and NVC resonated deeply with Emma. He explained that nonviolent communication wasn't just about avoiding conflict but about fostering genuine connections through empathy, understanding, and mindful speaking and listening. During the first session, Emma learned the 4 components of NVC: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. Oren guided the participants through exercises, encouraging them to observe situations without judgment, express their feelings honestly, identify their underlying needs, and make clear, respectful requests. Emma was particularly struck by a role-playing exercise where she had to express a need without blaming the other person. It was a challenge, but with Oren's gentle guidance, she began to see how powerful this approach could be. She realized how often she had communicated from a place of frustration and judgment, rather than compassion and clarity. Returning to work, Emma was determined to apply what she had learned. The next time a conflict arose, she took a deep breath and recalled Oren's advice. Instead of reacting defensively, she paused, observed her feelings, and spoke from her heart. "When I see the schedule changes at the last minute, I feel overwhelmed because I need some stability to provide the best care for our patients. Could we find a way to communicate these changes earlier?" Her colleagues were initially surprised by her new approach, but they soon responded positively. Conversations became more constructive, and the atmosphere gradually shifted. Emma found that by mindfully applying NVC principles, not only did her relationships with her colleagues improve, but she also felt less stressed and more connected to her work. Emma's transformation didn't go unnoticed. Her hospital invited Oren to conduct a series of workshops for the staff, fostering a culture of mindful communication. The changes were profound, creating a more harmonious and efficient workplace. Through her journey, Emma discovered the power of a mindful approach to nonviolent communication. She learned that by understanding and expressing her own needs and listening to others with empathy, she could transform conflicts into opportunities for connection and growth. In successful communication, we create understanding through awareness. Have you ever tried to talk to someone who just doesn't seem to hear you? Perhaps you've shared a story with a friend glued to their phone or attempted a conversation with a partner fixated on the TV. These experiences can be incredibly frustrating. Even though you're both speaking the same language, there's a lack of awareness, making it feel as if you're not even there. In such moments, communication is essentially non-existent. The key message here is, in successful communication, we create understanding through awareness. It might seem obvious, but we rarely stop to consider why we're communicating at all. The answer? It boils down to one simple word: understanding. Understanding is the purpose of all communication. For understanding to be the ultimate outcome in our interactions, however, we need awareness. But what does awareness mean in the context of communication? Awareness in communication requires presence. More than just a state of mind, presence means being physically aware of, and sensing, all aspects of yourself through your body. It's about being in tune with your mental states and emotional experiences as they manifest in your body. Achieving presence for a moment or two is easy enough for most of us. It's as simple as turning your attention inward and becoming aware of what you're feeling and experiencing at that moment. However, maintaining that awareness, especially during a conversation, is much more challenging. It requires time and effort to let go of old communication patterns, such as yelling when we don't feel heard or resorting to the silent treatment. Even when we know these counterproductive methods are ineffective, replacing them with something more constructive can be quite difficult. The good news is that presence can be learned. It's just a matter of practice and understanding a few basic principles. By cultivating presence and awareness in our interactions, we can foster deeper understanding and more meaningful connections. Leading with presence, the basic principle of effective communication. Think about the last time you admired a stunning sunset, relished a swim in the sea, or shared an intimate moment with a close friend. During these beautiful, intense experiences, we feel fully awake and completely present. It's this wholehearted presence that makes these moments so rich and memorable. But the benefits of presence extend far beyond extraordinary moments. Presence is accessible to us in everyday life and can lay the foundation for true connection and effective communication. The key message here is, leading with presence is the basic principle of effective communication. So, how do we bring presence to our conversations? Presence starts with awareness, which means knowing what's happening at the moment without judging or reacting. Developing presence begins with reflecting on what you already know about it. Think about what helps you stay connected and what distracts you. For example, you might notice that you're more aware of the world around you, and of yourself, when you slow down, listen to music you love, and spend time with good friends. Conversely, factors like hunger, fatigue, or stress can make you lose presence, leading to rushed actions or snapping at people in frustration. Once you identify the things that prevent you from staying connected, you can spot them in your everyday life and take the necessary actions to correct them. This awareness helps you manage your reactions and maintain presence in your interactions. Presence means being real and honest with yourself. It doesn't mean going along with everything or brutally expressing every thought. It means acknowledging and accepting the reality of what's happening. By being aware of your emotional states, such as stress or annoyance, you can choose how to react. While you can't always prevent these emotions from arising, being mindful of them gives you the power to respond thoughtfully. This reflective approach allows you to avoid unnecessary conflicts and enhances your communication. Leading with presence enables you to connect more deeply with others, fostering understanding and more meaningful relationships. Ultimately, presence is a skill that can be learned and cultivated through practice. By prioritizing presence in your daily interactions, you can transform your communication, making it more effective and enriching. Embracing presence as a fundamental principle of communication helps you build stronger connections, understand others better, and navigate conversations with greater ease and authenticity. Consciously choosing when to speak or listen, the key to meaningful conversation. A meditation teacher working with a group of prisoners once asked them to add up the time they were all serving. It came to well over 100 years. Then he posed another question: how long did it take you to decide to commit the crime that landed you here? The combined total was less than 2 minutes. Quite a contrast, right? While most of our impulses may not be criminal, the crucial pause between an urge and the resulting action is useful for much more than just avoiding jail time. When it comes to conversation, reflective pauses have the power to make it more engaging and, ultimately, fulfilling. The key message here is, consciously choosing when to speak or listen is key to meaningful conversation. When you approach a conversation with presence, you'll notice that every moment offers the option of speaking or listening. This awareness can make the difference between engaging in a sparkling or tedious back and forth with friends or colleagues. Meaningful dialogues require conscious decisions from participants, and knowing when and where to listen or speak in the flow of conversation is called a choice point. So how do you recognize choice points in conversations? With a bit of practice. The first step is getting to know yourself better by focusing on understanding how conversation works for you. Start by picking someone in your life with whom you feel comfortable. This is important because you'll already be more relaxed when talking to that person. When you're having a conversation with this person, pay attention to when you choose to speak. If you find that you're in the middle of a monologue you didn't intend to get into, try stopping and leaving a bit of space for the other person to jump in. You might also notice that at certain points you'll feel the pressure to say something, while at others you'll feel like holding back. As the conversation goes on, pay special attention to what it feels like to actively choose to speak, as opposed to automatically launching into a topic without thinking. Putting this exploration of your tendencies and patterns into practice will set you on the path to a more authentic form of expression. The great thing about communication is that there's no right way to do it, it's all about engaging in a way that works for you. Practicing being aware of when to speak and listen will help you fill your life with those scintillating talks that make conversing with our fellow humans such a joy. Incorporating these mindful practices into your daily interactions can transform your communication, making it more effective and enriching. By being present and making conscious choices about when to speak and listen, you can create deeper connections and more meaningful conversations. Recognize your unhelpful conflict styles and don't play the blame game. Have you ever lived with someone who wasn't as tidy as you? Imagine spending hours scrubbing the kitchen, only to find a fresh pile of dirty dishes crowding the sink. The frustration you might feel could cause you to wonder aloud why your housemate is such a slob. Conversely, if you consider your housemate to be a clean freak, you might respond to his accusation with, "Why can't you just relax?" In both cases, the conflict often boils down to what the other person is doing wrong. This tendency to blame others when things don't go our way prevents us from taking ownership of our part in the dispute. The key message here is, recognize your unhelpful conflict styles and don't play the blame game. Blaming happens when we react without thinking, and it only makes the conflict worse. Pointing out what's wrong with someone else is unlikely to change their behavior, it just makes them defensive. Unfortunately, we've all picked up some unhelpful ways of dealing with conflict. The good news is that we can change these habits by first recognizing and then replacing them with more productive ones. There are 4 main unhelpful conflict styles. Let's see if you can relate to any of them. First, there's conflict avoidance. As the name suggests, this is when you try to evade conflict at all costs, either by changing the subject whenever a problem comes up or simply ignoring it altogether. Second, there's competitive confrontation. This style involves forcefully pushing for what you want, completely ignoring the other person's point of view. Raising your voice, making demands, or even threatening someone can all be part of this approach. Third, we have passivity. This is the opposite of confrontation. It's when you give up before you've started, agreeing to whatever the other person wants, ignoring your needs, and failing to express your opinion. Finally, there's passive aggression. This is an indirect form of confrontation where aggressive commentary is typically buried beneath a seemingly innocent, or passive, retort. While this style of conflict might resemble avoidance, it's actually active but not open about it. Washing all the dishes except your housemates to send a message is a great example of this. By identifying and understanding these unhelpful conflict styles, you can start to recognize them in your own behavior and work towards adopting more constructive ways of dealing with disputes. Effective communication and conflict resolution require us to step back, take ownership of our part in the problem, and approach the situation with empathy and openness. Intention is the most powerful element of conversation. Though conflicts can be sore points in our communication, a difference of opinion isn't always a bad thing. Successfully working through a profound disagreement with a partner or close friend can lead to a deeper sense of intimacy. The differences between us make life rich, bringing us together and helping us get to know each other better. But how do we ensure that our disagreements foster new ideas and insights rather than ending in conflict? The answer comes down to one word: intention. The key message here is, intention is the most powerful element of conversation. When it comes to communication, the intention behind what we're saying is crucial. Starting with the right kind of intention, instead of getting caught up in habitual patterns of blame, allows us to create genuine connections with others. So what does this mean? Think about how you approach your experiences. You try to escape what you don't like and hold on to the nice things, right? It's a natural way to go about your life. Our mind judges everything as good or bad, resists unpleasant experiences, and tries to make the nicer ones last longer. When that doesn't work, we often end up getting angry at ourselves or others. But have you considered how much energy chasing pleasure and avoiding pain takes? Especially when these things are out of our hands, like another person's behavior, trying to control our experience in this way can quickly become frustrating and exhausting. Fortunately, there is another way. Instead of judging and controlling our experiences, we can simply aim to understand. And that's exactly what changing our intentions comes down to. So how does that work? The answer can be summed up in two words: curiosity and care. Curiosity is sparked by an interest in learning and recognizing what we don't yet know about something. Whether you're in a conversation or reading an email, you can address your curiosity by asking yourself a couple of questions: what matters to me or the other person in this situation? And what can I learn from this? This approach triggers a subtle shift from immediately jumping to conclusions to simply wanting to know more. Once you do that, you'll find the quality of your communication changes. Everyone responds better to curiosity than to accusations. Now for the other word, care. This can be summed up as goodwill and a willingness to pay attention. It means starting by assuming that the other person has something valuable to contribute. As soon as you see them as a valuable human with their own needs that deserve to be taken into account, you make a commitment to respecting that. By fostering curiosity and care in our conversations, we create a foundation for more meaningful, effective communication. Listening is how we maintain connection in a conversation. "You're not listening to me." Ever heard, or said, those words in the middle of a heated argument? If you're like most people, the answer is probably yes. We've all been in those frustrating discussions where our message isn't getting through. Both sides pile reason on top of reason, statement on top of statement, but no one seems to understand, or even acknowledge, the other's point of view. We might as well be speaking different languages. When that happens, it's a clear sign that somewhere along the way, the connection has been lost. The key message here is, listening is how we maintain connection in a conversation. When someone tells us we're not listening, it usually means that the other person doesn't feel heard or understood. Often, it's a call for empathy. So how do you make the other feel heard? One simple tool is reflection. It's a way of checking in to confirm that what you're hearing is what the other person intended to say. You either ask a question or restate what was said in your own words. This creates space for your counterpart to tell you whether that's what was meant. This communication tool helps get the intended message across and establishes a feeling of empathy, which can make the difference between a productive discussion and a nasty fight. For example, let's see how reflection can be used effectively in a common fight that a couple might get into. One person might say, exasperated, "I'm so sick of being the only one who ever does anything around here." If that's directed at you, you might feel tempted to leap to your own defense immediately with something like, "What about those 5 loads of laundry I did last week?" Instead, try to acknowledge how your partner is feeling by reflecting the emotions behind the statement. You could say something like, "Wow, you're really fed up, aren't you? This instantly sets your argument on the path to a potentially more constructive conversation about this or similar tensions in your relationship. Reflecting in this way won't always feel natural, and that's fine. It's just a toolie. The crucial thing is the sincerity of your intention, because when people feel heard, they're also more likely to listen. That's how connections stay alive. Recognizing our needs is at the heart of successful communication. Imagine what it would be like if, regardless of what someone said or did, you could always hear the deep inner concerns behind their words and actions. Imagine always intuitively knowing what matters to you in any situation. This kind of harmony with yourself and others doesn't have to remain a fantasy. It is possible in your everyday life, and it comes down to recognizing your values and needs, and those of others. Our needs are the basic values that drive all our actions. They are what matters most to us and the reason why we want what we want. The better we understand our own needs, the more open we are to hearing others. And the better we understand others' needs, the more opportunity we have to create true connections. The key message here is, recognizing our needs is at the heart of successful communication. Human needs range from the basics like food and shelter to more abstract ones such as creativity and fulfillment. Our needs also include connections like relationships with family or community, and feelings like respect and trust. Whether simple or complex, the fact is all our needs matter. What shows up in our everyday interactions, however, is usually not the needs themselves but the strategies we've developed for meeting them. A strategy is just a specific way of meeting a need, often expressed as something you want, especially from another person. For example, if I say that I need you to listen to me right now, that's a strategy. The need behind it is probably for understanding. Or if I complain about you showing up late every time we meet, this might be about a need for respect. Simply put, we get into conflicts because of how we express the needs we're trying to meet. The key to avoiding conflict is to recognize the needs behind the strategies. Let's say you want to go on a trip and suggest doing so with your partner and a group of friends. Though this seems like a lovely idea, your partner might actually prefer a romantic break with just the two of you. In this instance, if you both remain focused only on what each of you wants, you may end up having a massive fight about the trip and ultimately staying home. If you take a step back and consider what's behind the strategies, you might find that you're both trying to meet the same need for connection and belonging, albeit in different ways. Once you see what's at stake for each of you, why you want what you want, you can get out of the competitive win-slash-lose mode and work together toward a mutually fulfilling solution. Emotions are signals that alert us to our needs. What would you do if a smoke alarm in your home suddenly went off right now? Would you keep doing what you were doing, hoping that it would somehow go away by itself? Or would you start looking around to see if there were an actual fire happening somewhere? While we all understand the call to action that unmistakable beeping sound sends, the signals coming from within our minds and bodies can be much harder to decipher. These signals are our emotions, and every single one of them is trying to tell us something. Just like we know what to do when we hear the alarm, we need to learn to decode the messages our emotions are sending. The key message here is, emotions are signals that alert us to our needs. In many cultures, most people are socialized to believe that emotions are irrational, harmful, or scary, and tend to be associated with things like weakness or manipulation. Consequently, very often, as we grow up, we're trained to suppress and ignore what we feel. For example, how many times did you hear that boys don't cry or good girls don't get angry? Certainly at least once. But emotions are there for a reason. In fact, they are the main way our body and our mind send us messages about our needs. When our needs are met, we feel good. When they're not, unpleasant emotions like anger or sadness take over. When we refuse to pay attention to them, they can start to harm rather than enhance our lives. For example, we can get so overwhelmed by an emotion like anger that we get impulsive and lash out, damaging our relationships in the process. Or, at the other extreme, we can become so afraid of being overwhelmed that we bottle things up. Unacknowledged emotions like these can also be harmful and impair our communications with others. They'll still show up in our body language, our tone of voice, the expressions on our faces, and the words that we choose. All of these expressions can inform people about how we're really feeling. A fake smile or quietly seething resentment will not just be noticed, they're likely to help turn others against us. The skill of managing your emotions in a thoughtful way comes down to emotional agility. This involves being able to name what you're feeling, finding ways to experience that feeling in a balanced way, and expressing it openly, without judgment or blame. The more aware of your emotions you become, the more conscious you can be about how you choose to participate in conversations. By acknowledging and understanding your feelings, you can ensure that your communication is both authentic and effective, creating deeper and more meaningful connections with others. Raising a difficult issue successfully involves making an observation and avoiding judgment. Remember what was shared regarding the blame game? Well, in summary, blame thrives on judgments and interpretations. Your friend never does what he says, your colleague is disorganized, your partner is too messy, and so on. The ultimate result is that when the other person doesn't agree with your judgment, they're going to challenge it. And before you know it, you're in the middle of a screaming match. But how do we say what we mean in a way that allows us to stay true to ourselves without hurting the other person or starting a fight? The answer comes down to how we begin the conversation, and the trick is to start with the facts. The key message here is, raising a difficult issue successfully involves making an observation and avoiding judgment. We can all agree that when it comes to constructive communication, simply listening to the other person can get you quite far. Often, however, we have things we need to say too. Moreover, we might sometimes also need to raise issues that are difficult for others to hear. That's why it's important to find common ground from the start. In order to do that, you can begin with an observation, a neutral, concrete description of the situation that's separate from your judgment of it. It can be hard to separate observations from our subjective interpretations, though. So one quick test you can use is to ask yourself a simple question: if this situation were filmed, what would the camera capture? Let's say you're worried and angry because your partner ignored you last night when she got home from work. Can ignoring be caught on film? Or is one person simply walking past another, and ignoring is the interpretation you're adding to this scene? Another good benchmark is to think about whether what you're about to say is likely to cause defensiveness. After all, you're trying to connect with another person, not alienate him. How can you say what you have to say in the most neutral way possible? When you ignored me is likely to be a bit provocative. A more neutral way to approach it is simply to begin by stating a fact: when I saw you come in and walk past me. When you start turning your judgments into observations, you'll see that there's always more than one possible interpretation in any given situation. That in itself can often be enough to make us more open to really hearing what others have to say. To further illustrate this, let's consider a workplace scenario. Suppose you feel frustrated because your colleague missed a deadline, affecting your work. Instead of saying, "You're always late with your work and it's messing everything up," you could approach it by stating an observation: I noticed that the project deadline was missed, which impacted my ability to complete my part on time. This neutral statement focuses on the facts without assigning blame or judgment, making it easier for your colleague to respond constructively. By practicing this approach, you'll likely find that conversations become less confrontational and more collaborative, leading to better understanding and resolution of issues. Asking for something is about finding a way to meet a need. Do you have trouble asking for help even when you really need it? If so, you're not alone. For many of us, it can feel easier to carry a heavy load alone than to face the fear and discomfort of reaching out. And that's understandable. We don't want to be a burden on other people, we want to leave them free to say no. It's not that our intentions are bad, thinking about others' needs is great. But in the process, we often neglect our own. The key message here is, asking for something is about finding a way to meet a need. The reason it can feel so difficult to make a request is that when we ask for something, we acknowledge our dependence on other people. It can make us feel very vulnerable. That's because it opens up the possibility of rejection and disappointment. But the impulse to give and receive is actually one of our most natural. Think about the last time you helped a friend, not because you felt you had to, but simply because you wanted to, or when someone did a small act of kindness for you, like holding the door. Felt good, right? If we learn to ask for what we need, all our needs can be about experiencing this joy of giving and receiving. Often, when our needs are not met, the reason is simple: it's because no one realizes that we want something. A request is a tool that lets another person know your need and the specific action you'd like them to take to meet it. Remember when we talked about strategies? Requests are a great strategy for meeting a need. So how do you ask for something you need? The answer comes down to clarity. The clearer you are about what you want and why, the easier it is to find a way to make it happen. When it comes to clarity, it helps if the requests you make have the following 3 qualities. 1. Positive: say what you do want, not what you don't. Instead of saying, "Don't ignore me," you could say, "Can we spend some time talking this evening?" 2. Specific: ask for something concrete and doable. Instead of a vague request like, "Help me more around the house," try, "Could you take out the trash every evening?" 3. Flexible: make it more of a suggestion, open to other possibilities, not an ultimatum. For example, Instead of saying, "You must do this," you could say, "Would you be able to help with this, or do you have another suggestion?" By focusing on these qualities, you can make your requests more effective and increase the likelihood of having your needs met in a way that feels good for everyone involved. Dialogue will flow if you're attentive to its parts. Ever dance the night away? Then you know what a great conversation can feel like. Just like in a dance, the steps can take a while to learn, but when you're effortlessly spinning away arm in arm with a partner, it feels magical. So far, you've learned a lot about the steps, but now let's talk about putting them together. The key message here is, dialogue will flow if you're attentive to its parts. Just like dancing, conversation has its own rhythms of give and take. In fact, there are three main parts to a successful conversation. We can express ourselves, listen intently, or simply rest and take in everything that's taken place. Those are the basic moves of the dance. And here are some principles you can apply to help them happen as gracefully as possible. To begin with, there's framing. It's about how you set things up. The important thing is to start with something you have in common. That way, you create a feeling of working together instead of trying to compete. Say you want to talk about a hurtful remark your partner made. Instead of ambushing her with the most painful bit, "I felt so hurt when you called me an egoist." Start with some shared ground. For example, you might approach it by asking her to discuss yesterday's conversation and how you can both understand each other's needs better. With your dialogue off to a good start, it's a good idea to keep an eye on how it's going. That's where tracking comes in. It involves staying aware of both the process and the content of your conversation. To do that, first, pay attention to the kind of conversation you're having. Is it your relationship that's at stake in the discussion, or are you just trying to solve a logistical problem? When your partner called you an egoist, it might have been about you not coming to her work party. But what's important to understand is whether it's simply a matter of clashing schedules or if there's a deeper relational issue behind it, like her need for support. Another thing to track is who's the center of attention at a given moment. In other words, who has the floor, and how does it move from person to person? The more aware you are of those shifts, the more you can do to make sure that everyone has a chance to say what they need. And that's when the conversation flows. Final summary. Communication can be hard, but luckily it's a skill that anyone can learn. It comes down to cultivating presence, consciously choosing when to speak, learning how to listen deeply, and paying attention to our needs and emotions. When we have the sincere intention to connect, we can practice the steps that lead to truly fulfilling and productive conversations. Actionable advice. Next time you find yourself getting overwhelmed in the middle of a conversation, find a skillful way to pause. Make clear your wish to stay connected with the other person, and share that you need a break. For example, you could say something like, "I just need a moment to gather my thoughts." In this way, both of you can have some time to reflect and regain empathy for each other, instead of saying something hurtful on the spur of the moment. Understanding and recognizing conflict styles. Recognizing your unhelpful conflict styles is the first step towards effective communication. Conflict avoidance, competitive confrontation, passivity, and passive aggression are common styles that people fall into. By identifying these tendencies in yourself, you can begin to address conflicts more constructively. For instance, instead of avoiding a difficult conversation, you might approach it with a clear and calm mind, aiming to resolve the issue rather than escalate it. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Understanding your conflict style is a form of self-service that ultimately benefits everyone around you. The power of intention in communication. Intention is the most powerful element of conversation. When you approach a conversation with genuine curiosity and care, you create a space for understanding and connection. This shift from judgment to curiosity can transform your interactions. Instead of immediately reacting to a statement, take a moment to understand the intention behind it. This approach not only fosters better communication but also strengthens relationships. As the saying goes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Show that you care by being curious and attentive. The role of listening in maintaining connection. Listening is how we maintain connection in a conversation. Reflective listening, where you restate what the other person has said in your own words, can make the other person feel heard and understood. This technique helps in clarifying messages and avoiding misunderstandings. When people feel heard, they are more likely to listen in return, creating a positive feedback loop. Remember, most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply, as Stephen Covey wisely pointed out. Strive to be the exception by listening to understand. Recognizing and addressing needs. Recognizing our needs is at the heart of successful communication. Understanding both your needs and those of others helps in creating true connections. Needs are often expressed through strategies, which can sometimes lead to conflicts if not communicated effectively. By focusing on the underlying needs rather than the surface-level strategies, you can find mutually satisfying solutions. This approach not only resolves conflicts but also strengthens bonds. As Abraham Maslow stated, in any given moment, we have two options: to step forward into growth or to step back into safety. Choose to step forward by recognizing and addressing needs. Emotions as signals. Emotions are signals that alert us to our needs. They are essential messages from our bodies and minds, indicating whether our needs are being met. Developing emotional agility, which involves naming your emotions, experiencing them in a balanced way, and expressing them openly, can enhance your communication skills. When you are aware of your emotions, you can manage them better and communicate more effectively. As Maya Angelou said, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty." Embrace your emotions as part of your growth. Raising issues and making requests. Raising a difficult issue successfully involves making an observation and avoiding judgment. When you start a conversation with a neutral observation rather than a judgment, you create a common ground for dialogue. Additionally, making clear and positive requests can help in meeting your needs without causing defensiveness in others. Clarity in communication leads to better understanding and cooperation. Remember, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, as George Bernard Shaw noted. Ensure your communication is clear and effective. Thank you for joining me on this journey to better communication. If you found this summary helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, share this video with friends and loved ones to spread the knowledge and support the channel in reaching the next milestone. If you're interested in diving deeper into these topics, I'll leave a link in the description where you can grab the hard copy of the book. Remember, effective communication can transform your relationships and your life. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy communicating.